Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and in this episode, we sit down with Laura London. Laura is a legend in the world of magic. You probably recognize her from her red hair, but you may know her from being on every major magic TV show, things like Penn and Teller's Fool Us and The Next Great Magician. She also has had her show in the Edinburgh Fringe, Laura London Cheat, and we talk about the magic circle and the magic inner circle, and if you don't know what that is, you're going to learn a bit about it here. She has an incredible story that I promise you have not heard before, and we dive deep into her upbringing and her way into the world of magic and how you can build a show too. This was action-packed, and I hope you love it as much as I did. Please enjoy a wonderful episode with the one and only Laura London. Laura London. Laura, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
I'm so excited to have you on. This has been a long time coming, and this is part of my Glad I Went to Blackpool series, where I interview everybody that I've been wanting to interview for a while, but actually bumped into and spent some time with in Blackpool. So really happy to have you on. How you been?
I've been great. Yeah, things are good. It's a little rainy today, but apart from that, actually, we've had some sunshine. Work's good. I've been busy. It's been fun.
Good. Really good to hear. Okay. Well, we are going to start at the very beginning where we usually start, which is how you got into this thing. How and when did you get into magic?
Oh, well, that's an easy one. When I was young, so when I was 6 years old, I was diagnosed with a condition called ADHD, which had me bouncing off the walls. I was properly diagnosed with it. So, of course, my mum was living with a bit of a nightmare. But the doctors told my mum, if she's into anything creative, it should be encouraged. And they did try to put me on a medication, which she refused to do, thankfully. So I'm very, very pleased and very happy that wasn't the case. But she did find something creative. You see, I was 8 years old when I saw my first magician, and he didn't perform anything mind-blowing, funnily enough. But I just loved the way it made all the kids feel. It made us all feel, and I just loved it. And when my mom picked me up that day, she said, I said, Mom, this is what I want to do. I want to do magic. After that, every Christmas and birthday, I got a budget to spend at the magic shop, which at the time was Davenport's magic shop. And I mean, I would spend hours in that shop just reveling in everything that they would show me, and I'd say, Mom, I want that one. She was like, no, we don't have that much money. But I got to spend my time there, and I got to meet a lot of great magicians. Another thing that was very, very fortunate was I used to see this man. I was brought up in a place called Hendon. And I used to see this man walking up and down my road. I lived on a sort of like, not a motorway, but an A road, and he had this curly mustache and he used to carry these props. And I was like, Mom, that guy's a magician. She's like, you can't possibly know that. And I saw what door he would go into every single time I'd keep an eye on.
Wow. And
I made my mom knock on this guy's door. And she did, like, really embarrassingly. She just didn't even think he was a magician. She goes, I'm so sorry to disturb you, sir. But my daughter, she's really into magic, and she seems to think you're a magician. And he goes, well, I am a magician. And it turned out that man was George Cavari, one of the greats, lived just across the road from me. And he was a great collector, great magician, and also a creator of magic. So he showed me all this amazing stuff in his house. He showed me his posters, his books, but also he showed me magic tricks, and things that he'd created. And I was just blown away. So I was very lucky to see great magic. Plus, my mum owned a nightclub as well. So she booked magicians. So thankfully, she knew it was an actual job.
What an amazing start into it. It seems like it's, coming from so many different areas, not just one thing, not just one person, but a lot of ways to get you into it. I want to return to the journey, but I'd love to talk a second about growing up in London, being a fan of magic. I think that, you can learn a lot about the way that magicians do things based on the cities that they're in. Some, high populated cities are very fortunate to have lots of magicians come through town to lecture and a lot of opportunities. And then low populated cities, that's where a lot of creators come from, because they're tinkering and figuring out, and they don't even know about the magic community. So talk to me about what magic was like growing up in London, and was it good? Was it bad? Was it hard?
Well, like you said, we're so fortunate. London, we have so much magic. We have so much opportunity to see magic as well, because we're a big city with shows and things like that. So in any opportunity I got to see magic. We also had a fantastic convention called the International Magic Convention, which doesn't exist anymore. But I used to go there when I was young, and that was another opportunity for me to see magic, and also the magic shops, International, Davenport. So yeah, we're very, very lucky. I was also part of the Young Magicians Club at the Magic Circle. I entered the Young Magician of the Year and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a very fortunate position to be in when you're in a city populated with magic. But again, we are sort of very much focused over here as in getting out there and performing, because we have all the opportunity to do so. Whereas in smaller populated towns, cities, maybe magicians don't have that opportunity quite as much. So I was just keen to get out there as soon as possible. You know, I would show magic to everyone. Gosh, I think most people around me were sick of magic. By the time I was like 12 or 13, they were like, oh man, she's going to show us another magic trick. God.
That is really funny, and I mean, I totally resonate with it. Toronto, where I'm from, is not quite London, but still has the big city vibes to it. Talk to me about the next couple steps of the journey, and particularly, I'm sort of interested in when you. I mean, it sounds like quite early on you were aware of the community and magic and performing and all that stuff. I'm really curious about the chapter when you decided to do this full time. I assume your mom wasn't so surprised, given that you've been doing it since you were 8 or whatever, but really just interested about how that came to be, and was it a big jump, or did it happen gradually and it sort of transitioned easy?
Oh gosh, no, there's never an easy transition into becoming a performer, no matter which performing art you decide to take, because now you know you're going to be self-employed for the rest of your life, and you're going to be living from hand to mouth. So the transition, I don't think, is ever easy. Although my mum was very supportive, actually, she and I had a bit of a breakdown in communication and relationship when I was a teenager. That was due to me not being the easiest teenager, I guess, would be one way of putting it. And I left home when I was 15, and I left school when I was 15. So I don't have any GCSEs. I left school just before it. And I was homeless for a little bit. And I used that opportunity to do magic. I worked in a little magic stand in Covent Garden for a woman called Marina. She let me work on her stand, which was great because I got to do sort of demonstrations. You know, when you're doing demoing, gosh, there's no better way of really honing in, just being able to talk to people is a huge part of magic and how you present magic. I always say it takes a minute to learn a trick, a simple trick, but it can take a lifetime to learn how to perform that simple trick very well. We're not even talking about sleight of hand and getting into the difficult stuff that we're all doing now, the professionals doing now, just that alone. So that was a great opportunity. The other thing I used to do is I used to go to this pub called the Punch and Judy, which was in Covent Garden, which is just by the magic stand. And I used to go in at 16 and say, hey, if I do some magic for your punters, I guess, and they used to feed me. They used to give me food. I then, after a bit of sofa surfing, I was very lucky. I got a council flat when I was 16 years old. And I really had no choice. I was in a situation where it was either, you go down the bad road, which can lead to all kinds of places, drugs, alcohol, anything, when you're in those sort of worlds in that position, or you can just snap out of it. And I remember exactly the day I decided to become a professional magician. I remember what happened. I was 18 years old. And by this point, I had just joined the Magic Circle. I became the youngest member at that time because I did my exam on my 18th birthday. I was so desperate to join this secret organization, I'd heard about since I was a kid. So I'd already now started to meet people, and I'd started to spend time with professional magicians. But I was also still dabbling in that old world that I was in with my old, with my friends, who many of them are still my friends today. But, we spent our time partying. We were teenagers and some were a lot older, and all we did was just party and have fun. But I just knew that wasn't, as somebody who doesn't have GCSEs, somebody who doesn't have all of that. And it's not because I don't love learning. Gosh, I'm the librarian at the Magic Circle. I love study. I just didn't get on with school. That was all. I had to make a decision, and that was a tough decision to just go, right, I got to stop partying and I got to take this seriously. And I was very fortunate. Faye Presto was a woman who took me under her wing, and she changed my life at that point. She was amazing. She said, right, okay, this little punk kid with her crazy goth hair, she said, I can help you. And she really did. She let me follow her around at gigs and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Wow. So quite literally, magic is the thing that took you from homelessness into like performing in a full-time career.
Oh, 100%. Like the transition wasn't easy in that, like I said, it's just hard to become a professional performer no matter what area you're in. But equally, the transition was easy because I've always known what I wanted to do. I wasn't that kid who went, what do you want to do when you're a kid? Or what do you want to do, when you're an adult? And I'd go, oh, I don't know. No, the answer was always the same. I'm going to be a magician. That's it. I'm going to do magic.
What an amazing story, an amazing moment in time. And I love the way you said it, to go from somebody who doesn't have any degrees or any completion of school to the librarian at the Magic Circle. Like, just absolutely a wild, both sides to a coin. Can you talk a little bit more about this transition, this process? Like, I think there's a lot of people right now, and I'll give you maybe the context for it, where there's a lot of people right now that are struggling, potentially not to the level of homelessness, but to the level of feeling like they don't know how to, I don't want to say the word hustle, but like, they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, they just sit and hope a gig comes in, or sit and hope that like something happens. And it sounds like you obviously had to do the exact opposite of that. And you just had to figure it out. Can you talk a little bit about that grit and like what that's like, and maybe advice for somebody who feels like they have their back against the wall, whether extreme or not, and how to just sort of figure it out and have that grit in a situation like that?
Well, I mean, you've just got to get out there and do it. There's no point sitting behind your laptop, learning effects on YouTube. And, suddenly I'm really good at doing a diagonal palm shift, okay. But what does it mean? It means nothing unless you put it into context, put it into an effect that makes sense, that has meaning, and then go out and perform it. And that was the thing that I was doing before I was good at magic, if you see what I mean. So before I even got good at anything, I was literally going out doing very simple effects, but I was doing them. And I was doing them in front of people. Therefore, what I did is I used that opportunity to learn how to connect and present magic. Now you can swap out all of those little tricks and make them more difficult or not, or more meaningful, or you can start studying and you can kind of decide what kind of magician you want to be. But for me, I have been every kind of magician before I fell into this particular space that now I'm in. I was an illusionist, a comedy illusionist for a while. There are some pretty fun photos of me dressed as a little man where I used to have a 1920s act and I dressed like Charlie Chaplin. That wasn't for me. Look, the act did okay. I did a few cabaret clubs and things like that. But, again, I did it and I went, okay, put it to the side. This isn't it. I was a mentalist for a while. So I put together some, a couple of sort of 245 minutes so that I could go and do some cruises about 10, 15 years ago. And again, it was fine. Like, I loved it. And I still really enjoy studying mentalism. And I actually still do have an act that I don't do very often, but I love it. And I love doing it. But that's, again, not where I fell into. So I always say to people, try everything. If you're like, I'm just going to be a sleight of hand artist, well, you won't understand magic as a whole until you understand magic's history, where we came from, where the effects that you're performing came from. Really understanding how to connect and why magic is even something that it means something to people. You can go out and you can, I wouldn't say change their life, but you can certainly turn someone's day around by showing them something amazing. And that's what magic does. So I always say, don't do it for the money. Don't do it for, oh, I can't leave my job, I'm scared. Don't leave your job, until you're ready. But still go out and perform the magic. Still get out there and do it, even if it's for your friends, your family. maybe go to a local bar or pub, and even if you're in a small town, you can live in a tiny little town where nothing happens. You can be the only magician in that town. And how cool is that? You've got no competition. You're that guy or that woman, and that's an amazing place to be.
That's fantastic advice, and especially with respect to trying everything. Before we move on, because there's some questions, the other questions I have about what you said. The thing that's interested me there is about the different types of magic that you've tried and that you've done, and I think myself included, it's difficult to leave a type of magic. It is really difficult to be doing a type of magic and artistically decide that it's not for you, or for whatever reason decide that it's not for you. What kind of lens did you have on those things to say to yourself, I don't like illusions anymore? Like, I'm sure you could have just as easily kept doing illusions forever, or just as easily.
I definitely couldn't. I sucked, man.
Never mind. I take that back. No way in any way. Or mentalism, at least, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe you sucked at that too.
No, I'd like to think I don't completely suck. No. For me, the reason I feel it's important to try all kinds of magic is purely for the understanding of magic and what it means to be a magician, or to say I'm a magician. That's the but I think you always have a feeling in your gut, and my gut was always, I'm a close-up magician. My favorite kind of magic is performing to small groups of people, small intimate magic. I loved cards. I always did. When my mind was racing, and when I was a kid and I was bouncing off the walls, all my mum had to do was put a deck of cards in front of me, and just these 52 pieces of cardboard just blew my mind. All these things you could do with it. So I think I always knew what I loved, but there's a lot more, I wouldn't say, but yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into becoming a close-up magician. Certainly a skilled close-up magician. Anyone can go out and buy tricks, and say they're a magician. That's, and a lot of people do, unfortunately, which is something that affects our industry in a way. But I think still trying everything is really important. It helps your creative juices. It helps you be creative in general. I'm a huge fan of narrative-driven magic. So I created my show Cheat on the basis of just this idea of going, well, I'm going out and performing close-up at gigs and private functions and corporate events, but you don't get to, in those situations, really give meaning to something because they don't care. They just, you're turning up to an event. They don't even know who you are, half these people. And you're going, hey, pick a card and, oh, look, it's in your wallet. There it is. But meaningful magic, because of my journey into finding what I love, I was then able to put meaning into something, but I had to write it. So it doesn't mean I then changed my close-up act for these events. It just meant I wrote a show. And I don't think I'd have been able to write Cheat if I hadn't have done all of those things and tried it and worked out how to make a close-up show actually be a show that I could perform for not just 10 people, but 100 or 1,000 people, because, you can have screens and cameras and things like that. And I learned that by doing stage magic.
I mean, I definitely want to return and talk more about the show Cheat, because I was pretty fortunate. While I didn't see the full show, I saw you at the castle and you did what I think was a snippet or something that was from it in that show. So I have at least a flavor for what that's about. So I want to return and talk a little bit more about that show. But I want to touch on something that you asked earlier, or that you mentioned earlier, about working with Faye Presto, who is a legend in the magic community, and, her taking you under her wing. And what was working together like? What did it look like to have somebody finally, not finally in the sense of like you've been waiting for it, but, up until that point, it was just you, right? Just you against the world. And then all of a sudden there's somebody to really help you figure it out. Can you talk a little about what that was like?
What Faye did for me was something that very few people get. And for that, I will always be grateful, is that people become magicians, right? And getting a mentor is this thing that people find really difficult to get. She didn't mentor me as a magician she wasn't saying, let me teach you this sleight of hand. It wasn't about the magic. She mentored me in how to be an entertainer. And how she did that was she said, come with me to my gigs and just watch me work. So I would do that. Then she gave me her act, as in she gave me the patter, gave me the magic. And I mean, I was obviously nowhere near as good as her at her act, but, I was able to do her act, which meant I didn't have to think about writing the funny bits because they were there, right? Now I got this real feeling when I was doing her act and performing it to people, what it was like. And then slowly I was able to take those little bits out and put my flavor in there and take bits out and go, I'm going to do this trick instead of what she's doing. Because obviously, of course, the intention was never to do her act. It was only as a way of teaching me how to present magic in a really fun way. She also helped me in terms of, I wouldn't say style, but she certainly encouraged my my originality in that respect, because I went, well, I've got to conform. Maybe I should change my hair. Maybe I shouldn't have red hair. Maybe I should wear something like all the other women, but no, she was like, are you kidding me? No, you keep that hair. You do this. You keep your style, make it so that, yes, it can work at a corporate event or a black tie event, but don't get rid of who you are. And so she really taught me that. And I think that's something that every magician should remember, is that they don't need to change who they are to become a great magician. Part of making them a great magician is being them first, being who they are, keeping their personality, keeping their style, keeping what they love about themselves in the first place, and now throwing in the bits of magic that you love to perform, and now throwing in the presentation that suits you. And suits you is, I think, a key for me. Too many magicians perform magic that you're like, you sound like you're someone else, or you look like you're not comfortable in those clothes. Be comfortable in the skin you're in the clothes that you're in, and in the voice that you're using, and then put in everything else.
I love the juxtaposition of what you're talking about, where on one hand, you're saying, to be yourself and to be unique and to add the things that make you unique. And on the other hand, literally part of the origin story is someone saying, here's my act and all of my jokes. And, that's such an interesting juxtaposition that, you were literally doing an act that somebody else gave you to do. And in the same time, not losing your originality and uniqueness, and knowing that the fight, the thing that you need to do from then on is to pull out and replace back in, and also to not lose yourself into becoming Faye, but using it as a way to better understand what performing hard-hitting, funny magic feels like, so that when you're doing it right and when you're not.
Absolutely. That's exactly. It's when when I do her act and I knew that it went well, it's because I was doing it right. It was like I'd almost say that Faye lent me her act, and only for a short while. This was not like, you can have the act. No, not at all. It was just use this just while you're training, just while you're kind of getting on your feet, And what an amazing opportunity that is. And I understand most people don't get that kind of opportunity. Another thing that happens with magicians is when they do find, if they're fortunate enough to find a mentor, and most people find them in a very different way, in that they look for a magic mentor, a mentor that's going to teach them the way of whatever style. So you say you go to the Spanish School of Magic and you find yourself an amazing Spanish magician. It's quite easy to fall into a category of being similar, or in any, of the style of that particular kind of presentation. But actually, if you strip that back and you go, right, I'm just going to sort of borrow these ideas, and now I'm going to completely make myself different and unique from that original place that you started in. Now you're unique, but you've got all that amazing insight from that person that you've learned from, all that amazing knowledge. There's so many unbelievable mentors that teach card magic, and they are so good, and they're amazing mentors, because what they would do is they will encourage you to now be yourself. Right, here you go. You've just learned how to be the most amazing card magician. Now find your own feet.
You know, it's funny because one of the things that I came around to in doing this podcast and having interviewed so many magicians is I used to sort of grit my teeth about, I would be embarrassed, and also I would look down upon magicians who were early on, and they would buy a trick and they would do it exactly like the DVD. And it looked like they were Sean Farquhar or they were Aussie Wind or whatever the case is. And I used to do that when I got started. I used to do it and I would be embarrassed. And I looked at other magicians who were doing that now and I'd be like, please don't. And I realized that it is a part of the journey. It is the way for you to understand how to speak rhythmically, how to learn the way that you talk, how to land your jokes, how to land the magic, what the blocking is. Just copy. And then as soon as you can, as soon as you feel comfortable, you start pulling it. And then there's a certain point in your journey, specifically when you're a professional, that it's no longer great to be doing someone's exact act. And I think there is obviously, but I'm saying like there's a quite a solid line, where you shouldn't really be doing somebody's act verbatim or somebody's trick verbatim. But certainly while you're getting used to performing and getting into it, it's really changed my view. And it sounds like this must have been an amazing way to get confident in performing in a way that is different than performing for random people in a pub, but learning an act and learning what that looks like to show up and do an act and what the beats and all of that is like, and then swap all of the pieces out.
Yeah. Now I literally couldn't be more different to Faye. In literally every way. We're great friends. And in fact, funnily enough, we're doing after all of these years. She mentored me maybe just for a few years. Obviously, I've been doing magic now 20 years. So a long, long time has passed since that, since I had that amazing experience. And now all these years later in June, I'm actually doing a show with Faye. I'm doing my own act. She's doing her own act, but we're kind of built together. And, we're having these discussions going, how weird is that? Like after all these years. And our act couldn't be more different. I'm still doing the sleight of hand. I'm still doing the card stuff, and she'd say to anyone, oh, well, that finger flicky stuff, but we respect each other for that. She does like what I do and she does like who I became. And I know that. And that means a lot to me, I
love that. And I love the story. And I think it's really good context for anybody out there who is in the early phases and borrowing and learning more than they know they'd like to. So I'd like to talk a little bit now about the show Cheat that you put together. Again, I mentioned it a bit earlier, but I was lucky enough to see a small segment of it at the castle, or something related to a segment of it. And aside from it being a phenomenal piece, the thing that really got me, which you had mentioned earlier, is you told a bunch of stories, and up until doing some research recently, I just thought they were true. Like, I just completely thought they were true, which is like so funny to be in the entertainment industry, in the bullshit industry, in the whatever, and you go and you see a show and you're like, wow, I didn't know all that stuff about Laura, and then it's complete fabrication. I'd love to hear a little bit about how that came to be, but also I'm super interested in the context of something that you said in passing earlier, which is that in close-up magic, maybe if you're lucky, there's presentation, but there's rarely story, there's rarely a theater in that way, even in a formal close-up show, that we see a lot of the time. It is rare. And you see it in mentalism or things like that, where they build a story of this haunted doll or this or something like that. But in close-up magic, particularly close-up card magic, the only stories I can think of is a magician talking about their friend, a magician who did something, and now they do it too, or whatever the case is. So I'd love to, exactly, or someone doing another ode to Di Vernon. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how this show came together, and specifically how you're thinking about the story and the theater of it all.
So I was really obsessed. My favorite kind of magic to watch has always been narrative driven, always. And narrative driven magic for me is anything with a story, right? For me, watching Ricky Jay, was a joy. Online, I'd watch his pieces and the way he talked about the history of magic, which is something that I love. I mean, the history of magic is something that I'm very much affiliated with. And, I have talks on a particular magician called Mercedes Talma. I love story-driven magic, and I love the history of magic. So I loved watching him tell those stories, these real stories about history. So that was one of the ways that I realized that it was possible. I think as you're growing up, you don't even think about it unless you see people doing it. And then suddenly you go, wow, that is completely different to seeing somebody doing, just an ambitious card or a card to wallet or a coin trick. And then Darren Brown, of course, again, is another person, a contemporary magician who is, probably the most successful magician or, mind reader in the world, who has narrative-driven stories and has performed in Broadway and the West End. So I knew it was possible. I knew it was a thing. And of course, it's been now more than a thing within and of itself, and more people are doing it. So this was something I've always been fascinated by. In 2012, I became obsessed with the idea of just getting really good at sleight of hand, right? I was like, right, you know what? I'm going to knuckle down. This is my love. I found my love kind of then from a series of events that just made me go, right, I need to decide who I'm going to be now. I'd spent 10 years going around making a living out of magic, but I felt like a bit of a zombie. That might be a good way of saying it. I was going around these events. I was doing my act. And I could do it with my eyes closed, which is not a bad place to be. Because if you can do your act with your eyes closed, it means you're doing it. And as long as you're still presenting it like it's the first time you've ever done it, which I could do and I still can do, then that's not a bad thing, because it means you've always got a solid act. You're good, right? But I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't going home, picking up a book and learning. I was just going, oh, when's my next gig? And sticking on, whatever, the TV. And so I thought, one of the things I was massively passionate about was gambling, cheating techniques and things like that. So I started to learn them just on my own. Like I'd come home and go, right, I'm going to spend hours learning the bottom deal. This is what I'm going to do. And then when I can, I'll start reading more and more. And so, you can, I know people can't see what you can see, but I'm surrounded by books. I've got a whole section here on a big section on gambling, right? And I studied all of those books and I was like, right, okay. Now I went, but nobody cares. Who cares that I can do this stuff? Well, I cared because I was doing it just for me. But I'm also no Ricky Jay. I'm certainly not as good as any of the big gambling sleight guys, So I decided that I was never going to perform these effects or these moves that I've learned at a gig. So why don't I write a show where I can do these things? And if people want to see me do it, they can come and see me rather than the other way around, right? So that was the first step. Okay, write a show. Now I went, okay, but I'm also not the kind of arrogant person. I don't have that arrogance in me, which some people are absolutely able to have and sell, like Ricky Jay, right? You want to see him be arrogant and go, hey, look what I can do. But I wasn't that person. So I created a character called Geraldine Hartman, and I decided that instead I would create a journal, and this journal would be something that I came to be in possession of, and I would share things that I'd learned from the journal. Now, by doing that, I was able to do the things that I was practicing and learning and loved, but in a context that wasn't mine. It wasn't like, hey, look at me, look what I'm doing. I'm now saying, so anyway, I discovered this woman and she was amazing. And let me show you, right? I felt more comfortable in that skin, presenting that kind of magic or that kind of, sleight of hand skill, because I was just not comfortable doing it in any other way. And then, of course, it ran away with me. I decided to make it so it was personal, and the journal came to me by my great-grandmother and all of these things. But this didn't just come from me and my own mind. I had so much help. I was very lucky. David Britland, who is a prolific writer in magic, and he's incredible, and I'm so Oh, so thankful that this is a really, really good friend of mine. And he helped me on my journey. He must have read draft after draft of this script that I was doing, and he really helped me get that together so it was cohesive. And then I also had, this. I had so much help from so many people. Tim, who helped me with the music, and, just the ability to practice. I mean, people would help me. The one thing I would say, if anyone asks me, give me some advice, I'd say ask questions. Too many people don't ask questions to find out stuff because they're embarrassed. I had no problem calling someone up and saying, hey, can you just talk me through what shuffle tracking is? I've been reading about it, but I'm a bit confused. It's that kind of thing. So, I asked for help. I got the help. I wrote the show. And I was very lucky to have a show that actually ended up being quite successful.
Amazing. I have two follow-up questions about the show. The first is about belief. And the only reason I bring it up is maybe two things. The first is how funny it is that I had no idea what was real and what wasn't. I just assumed it was all real. But there's a conversation that I've avoided for a long time after having asked a lot of mentalists about it, which is about, like, do people believe the mentalism, right? Do they believe what they're seeing? And I think that's a conversation for another day, and one that I'm tired of talking about. But in relationship to this show, do you want people to believe the stories, or are they just beautiful stories that you wrote to give yourself fulfillment? And if they believe it, great. If they don't, it doesn't matter, or something different?
Well, if you see the whole show, then, you go through this entire journey with me. And then at the very end, I say something that gives you a little nod that kind of says, hey, if you tell a good story, well, you kind of forget about the lie, sort of thing, Of course, I don't want people to think that I'm deceiving them fully. I want them to leave my show and go, hang on a minute, was he just selling us a pack of lies? The whole thing for me is just giving them a journey. And that journey, I want them to be very much invested in. But I put a lot of truths in there. So I talk about actual card cheats, like Poker Alice Ivers, who's amazing, gambling card cheats and card gambler, should I say. She was a gambler. And I think that's how you do it. You throw in some nuggets of truth to make it believable. But I would never want anyone to leave my show and then find out and feel bad about it, right? So you have obviously had that experience. But
I didn't feel bad about it.
No. What I mean is you had the experience is that you found out it was not true, but you didn't go, oh man, I feel bad. Instead, I hope that you kind of find it funny. You're like, are you serious? And that was the feeling I wanted to instill, was just, if you found out that you would find the whole thing ridiculous, funny, that you were deceived, but in a nice way, and at least hopefully, and the thing that I hope for most is that during the time you watch the show, is that you were entertained. That's my only goal.
And I certainly think there's a different type of, when you're talking about that sort of negative feeling of being deceived, like, it's one thing to be told that you're doing something that you're not really doing, like talking to a ghost. There's another thing to be told a story and then seeing the actual stuff in front of you and then finding out that the story wasn't real, but you still saw the stuff in front of you. So I think there's maybe a different level to that. But yeah, I still enjoyed it the same. But certainly that's something I was curious about. As another question about the story, you mentioned earlier about, actually the very beginning of this, about being diagnosed with ADHD, and that being a through line of a lot of how you've been into magic, got into magic, kept yourself entertained and busy within magic. And I think one thing that people who get distracted easily, myself included, struggle with is sitting and writing a show or even a trick. That is a difficult process. And one thing that has allowed me to feel more comfortable doing that is knowing that the writing process is not necessarily sitting by the window with a tea and a pen and a paper and writing, and I'm being obviously a little bit silly, but for me, the writing process goes like, learn a trick, that you feel like you can kind of do the trick, go do it in the real world a bunch, and then film some of them, and then transcribe that, and then edit that to become your first version of a script. Because I struggle to just sit and write a script. I get lost at things like that. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what the actual writing process was like. Was it you with a pen and a paper writing words? Was it you sitting down with other people as sort of a way to keep your mind more active than being in a room with a pad and paper? What was it like to actually write it? What did that part look like for you?
Well, the truth is, look, I'm not good at sitting and just writing and getting in that mode. You know, the idea of sitting there with a cup of tea and pen and paper and or whatever in front of the laptop. I mean, I'll never be like that. That's not in my DNA. I wish it was. Gosh, you know, I'm friends with some unbelievable people who write. You know, I've just last week attended Eddie Dawes' funeral. Eddie Dawes, most prolific historian and writer that will ever, I mean, he's written more on the history of magic than anyone else. And I think that anyone else will ever be able to even touch upon the amount that he has written. And I'd go and visit him, or and I'm in awe of anyone that is able to do that. And I know that that's not me. So I think the first thing is to know your level, right? Don't try and force anything. And just write when it's right, I guess. I don't think anyone that maybe you're the same as me, if I sit there and force it and decide, right, today I'm going to sit here and write a script, it's never going to happen. It's just not. But if I have ideas, I have a notebook, and I'm analog, right? So I love a pen and I love a paper. So I have a notebook, and I could be on a train and go, oh, you know what? I mean, I'm writing a new show right now. This show is taking forever because I'm not that kind of person. There are some people from, like, for example, at the Edinburgh Fringe, magicians who write a new show every single year. Colin Cloud being one of them, and they're always really good shows, they make sense. They've got good magic content. And I'm like, how do you do it? To me, writing a new show every year is my nightmare. I don't know how you do it, but if I know my limits are write only when you're feeling it, when it's a moment that, you're on a train, or you're at your house, or you're even at at a party, and some things come up and you've gone, oh, wow, that's a great idea. I'm going to put that in. I just quickly jot it in. I carry my notebook everywhere with me. That's it. That's my process. My process isn't that unique. It's a bit haphazard. It's a bit like sort of whenever I feel like I can. And I've accepted that, which is why it takes me maybe longer than others to put it together. But I feel like when I do, I'm always happy with it, because I never throw things together for the sake of it, or because I feel like I have to get this done now.
I think that's helpful. I think it's helpful for a lot of people who struggle with the sitting and writing process and looking at a blank page. And there doesn't need to be a blank page. You just write when you feel like writing, and you add to it when you feel like adding to it. And at some point, it will have attained a critical mass that you've filled in enough of the blanks, and you're almost ready to put a V1 together and play with that,
Do you know what? That you've just hit the nail on the head for me. So yeah, when I get to a point where I feel like I've got a beginning, I've got a kind of gist of what the show narrative is going to be in the middle, and I've got a good idea as to how I want it to end. Now I'm actually inspired. So in fact, in a way, that process of just getting that, even if it takes a long time, now for some reason it just inspires me to want to sit at the table with that cup of tea and go, I'm gonna fill in those blanks, because I'm now excited. I'm able. My brain goes, oh my God, now I'm so close. Now let's get to that finish line. But it's about not forcing it, I think, for me.
Got it. And I think, one thing I was thinking about while you were saying that is, while it's not obvious, there are certainly different chapters in the show writing process. And there's brainstorming, and then there's editing, and then there's concept, and then there's script writing, and then there's blocking, and all these different things that are their own. And it's not like you sit and write a show top to bottom and you're like, I'm ready to do it. Like, it just doesn't look like that. It looks like 4, 5, 6, 7 completely different parts to it, and some require writing and no staging. They're just thinking, and some require exclusively staging and no writing. And there's just different pieces. And what you just said there really resonates with me, which is that each next step forward you take, you really start unpacking some of that fuel and motivation to do the next part and to fill in those gaps. So I certainly resonate with that.
The most important thing is, just having a beginning, middle, and an end. Once you've got that, now you can fill in the blanks, and I can guarantee you will just flow right into that. Because the process of writing that show was difficult, it was a journey, and it wasn't easy. I ended up writing a talk about that process and how I sort of tackled it, and I felt like the reason I could even do a talk on it was because I really, really felt it. If it really comes natural to you, that's such a fortunate place to be, and you are so lucky. But if you're not, I think being able to give you other ways of doing it and telling you, it's okay to not be that person, and you can still yet write a show. You're great and you're good. You'll do it. But also the other thing is, and I think people are so terrified of this, is I'm going to write a show, but now I need to find the effects. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to. You don't. You know what I do? Look at what you already have in your arsenal, right? Already look at the effects that you perform, and now see if you can even put even one or two or three of those effects within it. And just by changing that narrative, you can now throw that right in. You can throw that in, do things that you can do literally so easily. There's one less thing to worry about when putting a show together, right? This is an effect I do all the time. I'll just now change the words, and now it makes sense.
Yeah. And 2 or 3 effects that you do know give you the space to add 3, 5, 7 that you don't yet know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now it's just not so daunting to learn so many effects, but you just know you're going to nail that initially already, right?
I'd love to chat a little bit more about the magic circle. Embarrassingly myself, it's something that I knew about in loose passing, but you don't hear a ton about it in Canada unless it's a magician who's legit coming from the area or lives in the area, or you're really asking about it, you know what it is. And otherwise it just sounds like a place, I don't really know what it is. So now I know quite a little bit more, but I think a good portion of the listeners either don't quite know what it is or don't quite understand the level of what it is and the magnitude of what it is, and what it means for magicians all around the world who are a part of this. Can you give us a quick cliff notes on what the magic circle is, and then a little bit more as to like your journey there and what it is that you're doing now as the librarian?
Oh, so the Magic Circle is of course a magic society. There's hundreds, if not thousands of them around the world, but the Magic Circle is a hugely successful, I would say, society in that it's been going since 1905. It was started by the legend David Devant, and I mean the people that were on that first council are all legends. We talk about Maskelyne, and Cook, and this city is full of a rich history of magic, which is so amazing to be part of that city and that kind of place. And all I ever knew when I was a kid was I wanted to be part of this magic circle because, unlike obviously where you are, it's talked about quite a lot. When I was young, the president was David Berglass. David Berglass, the legend, a legend that actually I work with twice a week. I spend an awful lot of time with this man, and he is not only a dear friend, he has come to mean a hell of a lot to me personally, and I'm very, very lucky to be able to hear all his stories. And he was the first elected president. So before then, the presidents sort of fell into the role for one reason or another, and he was elected, which is really special, and took us on a journey of now all presidents are now elected, and has been since then, since 1989, I believe. it has a checkered history in parts, like anything does if it's successful. But all during the sort of certainly the 90s, the Magic Circle, I mean, it was featured on TV. It was people, if there was a magician doing an interview on a Saturday night TV program, the Magic Circle would be mentioned. So that's how big it is over here. And I think a lot of people in America know about it. And we've had a lot of affiliations with people in the Magic Castle and what have you. But I'm a proud member of the society. And I was very fortunate to be awarded to be a member of the Inner Magic Circle, which is sort of the highest honor you can be awarded, I guess. To be honest, I still don't know why half the time. I just feel very, very lucky I can say it. But there's levels to it. So you can be an apprentice, which is something that's more recent, an apprentice. So you can become a member of the Magic Circle, but you still maybe haven't quite passed your exam. Then you become a member of the Magic Circle, an associate of the Inner Magic Circle, which is an AIMC. And again, that's a sort of examined thing. And then for me, you get given an MIMC, which is where I'm at. And I love the library so much. I don't know, I'd say like maybe 15 years ago, I spent an awful lot of time there when I was working with Belinda Sinclair, this amazing woman who's from New York, who was doing all this research on women in magic. She gave me my first ever laptop. I didn't have a laptop. I had no money. I was very lucky. This woman came in and said, "Hey, I'm from New York, but if I give you this laptop, can you do me a favor and just spend loads of time in the library and just go through all the magazines and anything you find on women in magic, just scan it in and put it in this laptop for me." And I did that. So I guess I got a real soft spot for the place. So to now be the librarian, yeah, it means a lot. I mean, I'm surrounded by like 13,000 books of secrets. I've got everything. If I want to learn something, I've got everything at my fingertips. What a great place to be. It's not just me. There's a team of librarians, and yeah, I'm one of them, and it's great. And as a consequence, I get some, I can get a good book collection, and I get to spend time learning how to study magic, which is something I never did when I was younger because I really didn't know how and wasn't able. So it really helped me in so many ways. The Magic Circle allowed me to meet Faye Presto, so many of the great friends that I have, like Richard McDougall, and so many people I spend an awful lot of time with now from that place. So I'm very lucky.
What amazing context, and thank you for sharing that context for people that don't quite know what it is. And as one follow-up about it is, obviously, it is different than any other magic club in some major ways. And I think that in the last 10, 15, 20 years, a lot of magic clubs have struggled, especially with the way that the internet has changed how people gather and has changed how people share information. And I think that a lot of magic clubs have struggled to stay current, to have young members, to give their members things that they really need. What does the Magic Circle do different? And maybe what advice do you have to magic clubs around the world to be current or to be relevant in this world right now?
Well, first of all, we have our own building, which makes a huge difference. A lot of magic clubs I've done lecture tours and, for those that have, and many I'm sure of your listeners have, we know that we go to, the hall at the back
basements of churches. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or just wherever, a hotel lobby, wherever, a hotel room. Sorry, no room, that'd be weird. You know what I mean, like a conference room or something like that. Whereas the Magic Circle, we have a theater, we have a library, we have a museum, we have an amazing team of people that run these things. The building is pretty amazing as well. We got this building in 1998, and that obviously is something. So bear in mind, we started in 1905. So can you imagine? We didn't have a building, but even when we didn't, we were still making huge waves as a society. At one point, we were taking over halls where there were like 200 people turning up in these places,
Wow.
So we had no choice but to get a building. And through the sheer will of David Berglas and his amazing skill in raising money and getting this building together along with another, of course, there was a team of people that did this, but he was at the real forefront of making this happen. It changed everything, I would say, because now we have a place to come to where people can learn about magic, research magic. It's called the Center of the Magic Arts, right? The Center of the Magic Arts. Initially it was for if anybody's in town and wants to learn about magic, they could come, Of course, things change along the way, but the Center of the Magic Arts is the most incredible resource for magic that we have, I think, in Europe. I would say that there isn't anywhere more substantial for that. And I think that's why people love to come to it. We are current because we love to encourage younger people. And, things like our apprentice scheme is part of that. It's saying, okay, maybe you didn't pass the exam, but that doesn't mean we're not going to let you in. I tell you what we'll do. Give you the apprentice scheme. You can use the facilities, you can meet magicians, and you can use the library and see the museum. And hopefully with that, get better and learn. And now next time you come to do your exam, you're going to nail it. You're going to be able to pass, A lot of people, I know there's a lot of controversy and a lot of people don't like magic societies. And I completely understand that too. Some of my greatest friends in magic are not members of magic societies. We got Alex Pandrea in London. He's not part of Billy Kidd, one of my bestest friends. She's not part, but it doesn't mean that they don't, it's just not there. It's just not for them. So I wouldn't say a magic society is for everyone, but for me, it was a real help. So I'll always.
I have two other sort of major things that I want to chat with you about, and then we're going to get to the wrap up. The first is I want to talk a little bit about residencies. I think that's a great advice for a place to get started, and great advice for a way to get your name out, and great advice to put yourself in front of the right sorts of people. What advice do you have for somebody who is trying to do a residency, and maybe what context can you give us about some of the highlight residencies that you've had in your career?
Again, I'm very lucky to be from London, so I've had some amazing residencies. That's not for me. I'm not showing off. I'm just very fortunate, like I said, to live in a city where we have such amazing venues. I was the resident magician at the Savoy. I put together a show there once a month for 3.5 years. I was at the Café de Paris, the Café Royal, the Hippodrome. So yeah, residencies for me are kind of what sort of made me the magician I am today. And again, to mention Faye's also the queen of residencies. And I think because when I met her, she held some of the top spots in London. I just knew I needed to get one of those. Because if you put yourself into a hotel or a restaurant or a high-end restaurant or anywhere, even a local pub, to be honest, let's not put it all high-end. For me, that was my aim. You're in a position now where you're performing magic regularly, which is great because now you get to hone in your skill. You're meeting people that could potentially book you. Again, an amazing thing to be able to do, and hopefully will help you get work. But the biggest question I've always been asked is, how do you even get them in the first place, right? How do you get these residencies? And I've always taken this stance. Okay, and I'll start with with Café de Paris, right? It's always like always attend and go to the place you want to have as a residency, as a punter. Don't ever just walk in somewhere and be like, hey, I'm a magician. I don't suppose you want to pay me like whatever it is to do magic. Because if they're already successful, why would they spend money on you? You need to show them, right? You need to show them. But you equally can't just start doing magic. That's also really weird. So what I would do is I would pick a spot. I'd be like, right, this is the place I want. I want to work here. So I would go there regularly with my friends. Even if I couldn't afford it, I would make sure I saved some money and I was drinking in the place or having a nice meal. And I would always be doing magic for my friends. And then what would happen is the bar staff or the waiter would start to see you doing it. You go somewhere enough, they start to recognize your face. They start to find out, well, hang on, you're a magician. You do it for me. I did it in a way where I sort of would go, oh, would you like to see something when they kind of mention it, not the other way around. It needs to be that the place itself almost
thinks it's their idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're asking you, oh, like, what's this? And it's even easier in a small pub, right? Okay. Let's just go. We're in a small town. There's this really nice little pub, and this is the place you want to go. So you go there a lot. You start doing magic and staff knows who you are, Eventually you just say, hey, listen, I don't mind coming in and doing some magic if you want. Like I can come in on a Saturday night, you pay me 100 quid, 200 quid or whatever, 300, The thing is with residencies, they don't pay a lot, but they're regular. And obviously the more high end you get, it doesn't mean the more money you get, but it does mean the more chances you'll get paid proper money from hunters that you have. So for me, it was always like, I'm happy to do this for a couple of 100 quid because I knew I was performing magic for people that were wealthy or the sort of people that could pay me the sort of fee that I'd want, right? So now it doesn't matter, So that's how I'd approach it. The other thing, and a little cheat trick that I have is if you did want to get a high-end residency and say you're not somebody who has an awful lot of money and you don't have a really nice suit. Let's just go with that because most of the people listening are men, right? You don't have a nice suit. You just go to a charity shop. Go and buy one. Don't be embarrassed. Just go and buy a nice suit and then make sure that whenever you go somewhere, you look like you can afford to be there. And that was always a bit of advice that I've always held on to is always look like you can afford to be in the residency that you want to have.
Wow, that's great advice. Yeah. Look like you can afford to be there and that you're comfortable being there.
They're paying you not because you need the money. They're paying you because you are such value. In fact, you're giving them such a good deal. They can't believe that they've got you is how they should feel, and that's me not putting down any of the people that have booked me because I am so lucky and I love every single residency that I've ever had and all of the people that I've worked with and all of the friends that I've made along the way, and I'm still friends with so many people that, I'm friends with the owners of the Hippodrome Casino, to this day, I just had my birthday there and they always take such great care of me because I was resident there for a long time, and because you're also making friends, you're making connections just by being part of this amazing place,
One of the bits of advice that you just shared there is that a residency is not your big financial break. A residency is a way for you to get good, meet clients, and just have something fun, consistent. So you're not even like consistent income. Like it's more like consistent performing. So you don't get rusty and consistently putting yourself in front of clients so that you can drum up opportunities. Like this is not even for your consistent income. Like maybe it's beneficial, but you know what I mean? That's not what it solves. That's not the problem that it solves. The problem that it solves is a place to perform in your town for the right people, not as a fat check to help your bottom line. You know what I mean?
Also a great place as well. So say you've got your feet under the table, you've got a residency, you get a call and someone says, hey, so I want to book you. I've never booked a magician before. I mean, this doesn't happen often, but it can. And I'd love to see you perform somewhere. Well, most people say, well, I don't know, maybe I can show you something over Zoom. No, you can be like, well, on Saturday night, in fact, every Saturday night, I'm at this place. Come along, please. I'd love to see you there. Now they're seeing you in your environment. They're seeing you do your thing. You've got a place where you can also bring people.
And obviously you're comfortable as hell performing there, right?
Exactly, right? You want a great place to showcase what you do to people that even pick up the phone or send you an email and say, hey, I want to book you, but is there anywhere I can see you? Yeah.
That's fabulous. I want to talk now about an org that you are a part of called Breathe Magic. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what it's all about and some of the wonderful stuff you guys do?
Of course. Breathe Magic, I would say, is of all the years I've done what I do, is the thing I'm most proud of being part of. Breathe Magic is an organization where we use magic as therapy to help young people with in particular, a condition called hemiplegia, which is a condition that affects their hands and half their body. And the magic isn't just a mental stimulation and to help them with confidence. It physically helps them. And it's underpinned by science, which is something that is incredibly important with anything like this. But more recently, we've taken this now to other areas such as mental health, In fact, over lockdown, we even were able to help young people over Zoom, so this organization actually amazingly has just celebrated 10 years. And we have the most amazing people. It is such a privilege to know and spend time with the people that are part of Breathe Magic. Yvonne Farquharson, who is the founder, and David Owen. They are just incredibly kind, wonderful people. And you know what I think the most important thing that magic should have is kindness. Magic is this thing that we're able to share with people, this little thing that makes people smile. And with Breathe Magic, we're not only able to do that, we're actually able to help them as well. And all of the people within it, Richard McDougall, Will Houston, we have this hub of amazing magicians that are part of this. And it's a pleasure and a privilege to work with them all. So if you want to know more about it, just look up Breathe Magic, go on YouTube, and you'll see all of our videos and some of the things that we do. And it's a really special thing.
Fabulous. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I hope people go look it up and see how they can get involved in some way. Because I think, like we mentioned earlier, magic can do amazing things. And whether it's just making someone's day, or in this case, quite literally helping and quite literally making an impact, it's phenomenal. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, we have a deck of cards called Midnights, actually. If you buy this, Jez Rose put together this incredible deck, and so if you buy those,
that's fabulous.
You'll already have them.
Fabulous.
And it's a beautiful deck too.
We'll put a link to it so people can find it easy, and that's an amazing double whammy that they can get an amazing deck and support this org. So thank you for sharing that. The last part of this podcast is the same way that they all end, which is with a few of the same questions that we ask every guest on this podcast to wrap it up. So the first question is the endless chain. So in order to keep this podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest that would be an amazing person on this show. There are two catches. The first catch is that we cannot have had interviewed them already. And I can tell you, fortunately, many of the names that you mentioned or that were brought up in this call have not been interviewed, as just a place to maybe search for yourself. And the second catch is that you do have to be able to put us in contact. You can't just name a person and that neither of us know. You have to be able to help connect the two of us. So who might be a really good fit for a long form conversation like this?
Richard McDougall and Billy Kidd.
Billy Kidd was like one of the first 10 episodes ever. But Richard McDougall is fabulous, and that would be really amazing. And there are some people as well that you've mentioned or that we've mentioned in this podcast that I will message you offline.
Paul Keeve.
Oh, fabulous. Also great.
He's going to be like, hey, I can't believe you've done this. Now they ask him.
These are two amazing names, Richard McDougall and Paul Keeve. Thank you for that. The next question is about modern magic. A lot has changed in the world of magic in the last 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years, even more. What's one thing you like about the world of modern magic and one thing you don't like?
Oh, I don't like to say things that are negative. But I'd rather end this bit on the things that are positive. What do I think is negative? I mean, we're such an amazing industry. It's I think it's a little unfair to talk about anything that's negative, because I just don't see how it can help. There's a lot of things I don't like about this industry, but my saying it doesn't make it different. It won't help it. I could say that some people approach magic in ways that I dislike, but that's not, again, not only is it not helpful, but that's also pointing out things that I can't change, which I wish I could. So I'm not going to answer that, if that's all right. But what I will do is I'll tell you what's great. We are encouraging more and more young people in a positive way, and especially young girls. And I'm the first to put my hands up and go, I am not a feminist. In fact, I say that a lot of the problems with women in magic come from women in magic in some ways, However, I'm seeing more and more young teenagers, 13, 14-year-olds coming up to me at conventions, and they're good, and they really have a great understanding of what they'd like to be. And they're not just sitting there going, I'm going to be a cardistry person. I actually want to do magic. And one of those is a young girl called Magic Macy, who's killing it on Instagram and YouTube. And she's just got her own show, she's a teenager and she's doing her own show. So I think we're in good hands, is what I think. I think the one thing, you know what? I do have something. And it's not a negative thing. It's just something I would love to encourage. I would love to encourage more young people to get into the history of magic. That's something that is a huge part of my world. I love the history of magic. I'm very fortunate to have great friends that are historians, such as John Davenport and Anne Davenport, and further, just amazing. Paul Keeve, Will Houston, all of these people are still doing it. But I worry that if the younger generation doesn't get involved, magic history is never going to be lost, but it would be sad if it isn't talked about. So yeah, that's something. But otherwise, I think young people, for the most part, are looking up to the right people now, more so than they were 10 years ago.
Love that. That's great. And a great positive to the negative, which is like it's great. I love it. The last thing is plugs. I know you have a new show that's in the works. I know you have a deck of cards that's coming out soon. Where can people find you? Where can they follow along? And where can they get some of the amazing magic you have released, and also be up to date on the stuff that's upcoming?
Magic I have released, you just find it. Laura London magic stuff. So I am working on a bit of a project with 1914 D. Christopher, which I'm very excited about. I won't say what it is just yet, because it's going to hopefully just be a thing that's going to come out soon, and we're going to explode with this new effect, which will be exciting. But yes, I'm collaborating with Christopher Lacoste with the Mint deck, who's an unbelievable card designer and person. And we're doing this with Murphy's. I'm really excited because it's such a beautiful deck. The idea is, should I say it? Yeah, they were going to have the London Reds, the London Blues, and the London Whites.
Ooh.
And they are going to be beautiful. We're going to have 2 decks that you can just buy, and one that's going to be limited. And honestly, I'm so proud of everything that's gone into this, and I can't wait for people to see it. And hopefully that'll be something people will see very soon. So yeah, I
love that. Thank you, Laura, for this wonderful podcast episode and this wonderful discussion about so many amazing things under the sun. This was an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much for doing it with me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It was so much fun. You're amazing. And this podcast is just great. And thank you so much for doing it. It's great for us.
Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. As usual, please spread the word, tell a friend. It means the world. All you got to do is share it on anything, Facebook, Instagram, Tinder. I don't care. Tell someone. Anyways, thanks for being here. See you next Thursday. Peace.